Welcome to Bytes of Code. In this video, we'll make a Python script that will make it seem like that we're actually active on the computer. And I have the script running right now, and you can see that this script will be able to move the mouse, click, scroll, type, and even delete what it's typed, even if we're not anywhere near the computer. And if you don't have a lot of coding experience, don't worry, because 99% of this code will be created by ChatGPT. And after we code this and see this bot working, we'll walk through every single line of code so that we can understand what the script is doing and so that we can code this ourselves today. So let's go ahead and take a look at our ChatGPT prompts. So to start, I asked ChatGPT to write a Python script using PyAutoGUI that will move the mouse back and forth a little, only move the mouse whenever the mouse has not moved in 5 seconds. And we get a great response here from ChatGPT, and when we copy and paste this code, we get this. So after 5 seconds of basically no activity from the mouse will start to move on its own, and you'll see it kind of go from side to side, and that will be it. That's exactly what this script will do after 5 seconds of the mouse basically not moving, a couple seconds of inactivity. But let's push this a little further. This is kind of simple, but it's doing a great job. Let's go back to ChatGPT, and we asked ChatGPT to add some scrolling after the mouse moves. And with that prompt as a result, we get this. So it's kind of like the same as before, where after a couple seconds the mouse will move, but you'll kind of see that the page will scroll a little bit also. So we'll let it do it one more time, and we see the page scroll. So let's stop the script and let's continue to push this even further. We go back to ChatGPT, and now we ask, instead of moving the mouse only left and right, move the mouse in a random direction, but with only a maximum of 300 pixels. So the mouse has only been moving left and right. What I would like to do is to get the mouse to move in pretty much any direction, and I want to keep it in an area of about 300 pixels. So ChatGPT again does a great job in its response. This is what it gives me, and when we copy and paste this, we get this. Let's go ahead and run this script and see what happens, and we'll see we kind of get a diagonal movement. ChatGPT is doing a great job. If we scroll a little further down, we can see that ChatGPT has given us a math pi, math cosine, and math sine, and that kind of is all being put together in order to give us kind of like a more natural random movement of the mouse instead of going back and forth. And that's been really cool. Even though this script is really cool, what actually happened is we have lost our scroll. So we're going to go back to ChatGPT and ask it to give us a scroll, but we're going to kind of improve our scroll. We're going to ask it to scroll a random amount up to 5,000 for a scroll amount. Now, I think I ended up switching this to 1,000 at the very end. 5,000 is a little bit high after I did some playing. Well, right here I have 2,000. So this is going to just be the maximum scroll amount. You can change that variable, and we'll talk about it when we review in the last version of the script. But what we have now is the ability to have a mouse move randomly in a random direction for a random distance, and also we have a random amount of scrolling that's been put in place. So let's continue to push ChatGPT even further. So now let's go to the next version of this bot from ChatGPT, and the next prompt I give it is still using PyAutoGUI. After moving the mouse, simulate a click and press enter, then type a few lines of sample Python code with AutoGUI typewriter. Have a dictionary of sample Python lines of code and choose which one to type, and after typing, delete every character that was typed. And this has been my favorite version, and we'll have it run here so we can demo it to see actually what's happening. But we've now introduced typing into our bot. So after a few seconds of inactivity, we'll see Python type, and you'll see a bug where we'll actually delete all of the file contents. So I do tell ChatGPT to pretty much fix this bug, because what's happening is it's using Control A, which is selecting everything in the file, and then pressing backspace, which is then deleting it. So I told ChatGPT, do not use Control A. After typing this line, use PyAutoGUI to press backspace for every character that was typed, and ChatGPT gives me a great little snippet right here that deletes every character. And this is what we actually put into our next version, and let's go ahead and run and see that. So now what we have is a bot that moves the mouse, clicks on something, starts typing, deletes everything that it's typed, scrolls a little bit, and then moves the mouse back to the original position. And this bot works great, except when I actually am typing something. And I'm going to give an example here. This is a bug that has existed pretty much since the beginning of our ChatGPT prompts. So if I type, you'll see that the cursor starts to move on its own, and it pretty much interrupts my typing. So what I want to do is put some sort of handler, some sort of event handler that makes sure to not run this bot whenever I'm typing. So the next portion of our ChatGPT prompts is actually to add a handler function for keyboard events where only move the mouse when no key has been pressed on the keyboard. ChatGPT gives me this onPressed function, but this is not exactly what I was looking for. It didn't exactly work in this case. So I'm actually trying to move ChatGPT in order to use a onKey event for the keyboard module, and it does that. It gives me this, and this is pretty much what I was looking for. The actual contents of this function is not exactly what I was looking for, but we did make a small change in this area where I'm sure ChatGPT would have been able to do it on its own, but we pretty much update the last move time in this function. This kind of tells the whole program that, hey, we're actually still active, things are going on in the computer, don't move the mouse and start typing randomly. So now when we run this code, what will actually happen is when we start typing, we see that the mouse is not moving on its own. But I'm going to go ahead and stop typing, and probably in about 5 seconds, because that's the time that we wait, you'll see the mouse move on its own, click in an area, and then start typing. Perfect. So our script is still working really well with this new onKey event handler. And just like that, I'll let this run in the background here. And we have our final version. We have a bot that will wait a few seconds of inactivity, move the mouse, type something random, delete it, scroll and scroll back, and move the mouse back. If you enjoy seeing the script, please leave a like. If you have more ideas of what you'd like to see, please leave a comment. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. But as usual, we will go through every single line of code now and explain everything so that you can make this or modify this in any way that you want.
So let's go ahead and start at line number 1. PyAuto GUI. This is a very important module. This is what we're using for everything. The mouse movement, the scrolling, the typing. It has to do thanks to this module. Line number 2, import random. We're going to be using this for making the random mouse movement, making the mouse move randomly, but also scrolling. The scrolling will be scrolling a random amount back and forth, and we will even be using the random module for picking out which string to type. It will pick it out randomly. Line number 3, we're going to be using import time, and this is going to be used for detecting inactivity on the computer. Pretty much if the computer has been inactive or we haven't sensed any movement on the computer for 5 seconds, in this case, then we know we're going to go ahead and start our bot to actually do stuff like the moving and typing and scrolling. Import math is going to be helping a lot with making the mouse movements more realistic, and import keyboard is going to be actually used for the event, detecting to see if the key has been pressed or released, and making sure to catch that event and update our last move time variable to pretty much tell our script that, hey, we're still active because we're using the keyboard. So let's go ahead to line number 10 now, actually our code. This is going to be a variable. Python lines is a dictionary. In this case, it has 4 keys with the values of strings. In this case, you can add more or you can take away depending on what you want. But this is just, even though it looks like Python code, this is just a string. So you can put whatever you want in here, not a string, a string. Line number 19, X and Y, is going to be getting the position of our mouse. So it's going to be returning the X point and the Y point of the mouse on our screen. These are going to be coordinates using PyAutoGUI.position function. We're going to be seeing that a lot later. Line number 22, max move amount is going to be the maximum amount of pixels that we want the mouse to move. So I didn't want the mouse moving super all the way to the left and getting to areas that I don't want it to, or basically like maybe even getting up here and pressing a click. I want the mouse to be very restricted in its movement, in its area. So that is why we have the max move amount. This is only going to move the mouse a maximum, up to a maximum amount of pixels, but it will end up be random. So it will move just a little bit, or it'll move just a lot, or it'll move somewhere in between, but we have pretty much a set area for the mouse to move. Wait time is going to be the time in seconds to wait before moving the mouse and scrolling and clicking. This is going to be something that you can update too. If you're saying, hey, this is 5 seconds is just too soon, I would like it to be 1 minute of me being inactive on the computer, so you would change this to 60. But in this case, this is going to be the wait time. This is going to be how long the computer was inactive before we start doing things. Line number 27, our max scroll amount. It's similar to line number 22 because this is just going to be for the scrolling. So we pretty much just have a maximum amount that we want the scroll to go to, and then it's going to go back. Line number 30, last move time. This is going to get the current time using time.time function. And this is going to be kind of keeping track of when we last did something on the computer. So at the very beginning, we just get the last move time as the current time, and we're going to be checking this later to make sure that we have not done anything, that this variable has not been updated, means that we haven't done anything on the computer. Our handler function, line 32, is going to be a function called onKeyEvent, and it takes in an event variable. We can see that we will call this anything, but just as long as we have it the same on line 37 and 38, which we'll get to. Line number 33 is global last move time. This is going to be pretty important because global means that, hey, this variable kind of already exists. We're not going to make our own variable. If we were to remove the global, what this function will be doing is just using the last move time within this function. So actually we would like this variable last move time to be updated with the latest time. The purpose of this function is to update the last move time whenever we press anything on the keyboard. So this makes sure to tell the script that, hey, we're still active, because even though maybe we're not moving the mouse, we're still pressing keys on the keyboard. It means we're still active on the computer. Line 35 is actually where we're updating the last move time variable. And this is very important because if we didn't do this, then we wouldn't actually be telling the computer that we're active. Again, we'll see the last move time and how important it is in line 45. But line 37 and 38 is actually what's making our onKeyEvent useful. It might be important to note that it doesn't matter what it's named, the function. In this case, I named it test. But as long as we have this function tied in to these event handlers, on press and on release. On press is going to be whenever we press something on the keyboard, and on release is whenever we release a key or unpress, maybe we can say, a key from the keyboard. The on release maybe might be a little bit over the top, maybe, but in this case it's not really hurting us, it's actually helping us slightly, so we're just going to leave it in there. But again, these are actually the events that will determine whether the key was pressed or released, and then we pass it the function that we want it to run whenever this event happens. Line number 40 was while true. Here we have an infinite loop. Infinite loops are fun, but this is all that we're doing here. All the rest of this code is going to be within this infinite loop. So line 42 through 44 is just me printing out some variables to help visualize line 45. So let's go ahead and run this code for a little bit. I print out last move time, the wait in seconds, and the current time. And pretty much what we're looking for when we see this printed out is when the current time and the last move time are the same, that means that we're active on the computer. And you can see me moving the mouse a little bit, but when I stop moving the mouse, you'll see these numbers kind of start to be different from each other. They'll start to grow apart. When they are 5 seconds apart, that is when our script kicks in. So that is what line number 45 is doing. If our current time minus our last move time is greater than our wait time, or we can say if maybe there's a difference of 5 seconds between these times, then we will actually go into our if condition. So that's why this portion is very important, because it actually kicks off the mouse movement and the typing and scrolling inside our script. So if it's not greater than our wait time, then we just skip over this if condition. But let's start to go into our if condition now, and then we'll see what happens later when we actually skip out of our if condition or we pass our if condition. Line number 47 is going to be the direction. We're using a random number here from 0 to 2 times pi. And this is important because this is actually giving us a more realistic range of movement, maybe like a circle rather than a square, and that's why we're using math.pi. The distance is fairly simple because it's just using random not uniform from 0 to max move amount. So we're getting a random number from 0 to, again, our max move amount, in this case is 500, and this is actually going to be the distance, how far that we're traveling with our mouse in that direction. But line number 50 and 51 actually make it the most realistic, and I'm going to actually remove the math sign and cosine so we can see what would happen if we did not have math sign and cosine. We will see basically the mouse after inactivity will just move to the bottom right, and it will move in a very diagonal pattern. So that's pretty much all what it's going to do every time, but it will move less or more, but that is the movement of the mouse every single time. So what we want is actually to have a more realistic movement, and so that's why we use math.cosine and math.sine. So this actually creates the x and y offset variables, which we use in line 54. Line 54 is really cool because this is actually when we start to do things automatically with Python. So we take our original x and y coordinates, that's where we have in line 19, our original mouse position, and then we just add our offsets that we calculated in line 50 and 51. This is telling the mouse to move to this position, but the last parameter, duration, tells us how quickly we want to get to that position, and in this case it's in a half a second. So in half a second, get to this new x and y position. Line 56, we go ahead and do a click, and 58 is where we actually grab our random string from our dictionary. So we're going to take line 68 by the center first. Python lines.items returns all of the contents in our dictionary. The list here kind of wraps it and casts it into a list in order to pass to the function choice. So our module random has a function called choice, and all this does is it just picks a random index in our list, and this just makes it a little bit more random as to what we type. The return from this choice function is a line number and also the code. The line number will be the index, and the code variable will be the actual string. So in this case, let's see, it picks number 3. The line number would just be 3, and then the code would be this entire string. Once we have that, we're going to go ahead and use just the code variable, which is a string, and we're going to use PyAutoGUI again to write this string with an interval of 1/10 of a second. And this is going to be for every key press. So between every key press in this string, it will just be a small pause of 1/10 of a second, just to make it look a little bit more realistic. Line 62 is going to be a loop where we loop through our code string. For every character in our code string, we will loop and use PyAutoGUI to press backspace. So this is going to be deleting everything that we've typed line by line. 66 is a variable called scroll amount where we get a random number from 0 to max scroll amount. Again, this is something that you can change if you see maybe it's scrolling too much or not enough, but this is the maximum that we would have our script scroll. It's going to get that random number, and then it's going to actually use PyAutoGUI to scroll. And here we have everything wrapped with an int. It's because we're just casting all of these numbers, the x and the y, and the scroll amount to an int. The x and the y is going to be the original mouse position, so we're just telling this scroll function to go to the original mouse position and use that area to scroll and scroll this amount. Then we use PyAutoGUI to move our mouse back to the original position, again with a duration of half a second, and after it moves the mouse back to original position, we're going to scroll back. The line 72 and line 68 look incredibly similar. It's just this negative sign right here. This is just undoing, we can say the scroll is scrolling back to the original position. Line number 75 is updating our last move time. So this is saying that, okay, we've done all this stuff. We're going to wait until we do this again. So it updates the last move time to the current time. Now line 77 is actually outside of our if condition. So if we're not doing this, we're not doing all the moving, mouse clicking, and typing, then we're actually here in line 77. And line 77 is just making sure to get the current mouse position. Again, using PyAutoGUI.position. This is the same that we did at line 19. We're just getting the position of the mouse again because we're wanting to check in this if condition, line number 79, we're checking to see if the mouse has moved. If it is equal to the new position, then we don't do anything. But if it's not equal to the new position, we enter inside this if statement, line number 81, and we update our last move time. So this is telling the script that basically the mouse has changed its movement. It wasn't where it was before, so we're pretty much for sure we're active on the computer. Let's update our last move time. But as well, line 83, we update our original position. Since we've moved, let's now change our original position to what the mouse is currently. So this is just making sure that we're always keeping track with the mouse. The mouse is actually telling our script that we're active on the computer. Line number 85 is our last line in this script, time.sleep. And it is just making sure that this while loop, even though it's infinite, it will run every second. That doesn't mean that we're moving the mouse in every second and typing every second. It just means that we're checking for activity every second. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoy seeing any portion of this video, if you learn anything, please leave a like. If you have any ideas of what you'd like to see, or maybe something isn't working for you on this script, please go ahead and leave a comment. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. But thank you guys again, and I hope to see you at the next video.